differently abled differently.
Welcome back, and you're watching Abled Differently. Richard is grateful that finally the church has embraced persons with disabilities, especially the deaf. Take a look at that story.
I was born 61 years ago, and I grew up normally. That is in Embakasi Primary. That is where also I went to primary school. And the time that I was 16 years old, that was in Form 4, I became sick, and I had a sickness called meningitis. And for 4 days only, I developed a lot of pain at the back of my head, and for 4 days I became a deaf person. So that is how my world changed from a hearing person to a person who cannot hear. So it means that my dreams of becoming a teacher or a doctor, all of them, they disappeared.
When he lost his sense of hearing, Richard thought that he was the first person who was deaf.
After I became deaf, I thought in the world I was the first deaf. I was the first person to become deaf. And also in our village, there was no other deaf person. I remember it was only one old man, but who could not speak and could not even read. So I thought I was the only person in the world to change from a hearing person to a deaf person. But now I thought, how am I supposed to communicate? And also, I started slowly communicating to my parents, but I could not hear. So what was I to do? I was looking at them, at their mouth, and I could try to lip read and grasp some words that they were trying. So through lip reading, this is what I could see, but it was not a perfect thing. It was not a perfect words that I could read. So they started writing for me. And if they don't write, I could ask them to repeat again, or maybe to point at what they are trying to speak about.
He had to communicate through lip reading, and this also had its own challenges.
After I became deaf, I was so depressed. And I stayed home for 1 year without roaming around, because the people that I was going together with them at school, when I meet them, they could laugh at me because they could not understand what I'm signing. So now they made me to be a fan of jokes. And that is how now I decided to stay away from people and from interacting with people. I stayed for that for a long time, but slowly my mind started opening up, and I also saw that people cannot change. So I started accepting my condition, though it was not easy, but it helped me. And what helped me more was reading books that was encouraging me to see the world in a different way, and also the books that also could give me hope. But now, in my family, that was where the biggest challenge was. Me being the firstborn in my family, they had a lot of hopes in me. And also, they educated me very well, and they tried their best to push me so that they see that I've succeeded in life. But now, when I became deaf, they all became heartbroken, they cried, and nearly all of them were sad. And they tried their best to help me to become a hearing person again. They took me to many hospitals, and also they took me to traditional doctors. They tried their best, and also with the faith-leading churches, they tried to make me to hear. But all of them, they failed to make me hear. So later on, they accepted. I went back to the home, and that is where I started now. Because before I became a deaf person, they were respecting me a lot. And also my parents, before they decide anything, they could have called me and then asked me what is my idea, what do I think, and the points that I think about. I could explain to them, and also we share ideas, then we make a decision, all of us. But now everything changed when I became a deaf person, because when my parents are meeting to talk, before they decide and they want to call me as Mtai, they remember, Mtai does not hear. So they leave me, and then they call my younger brother to talk. And after they have talked and decided, then my parents now goes. And then they tell my younger brother to now tell me what has happened. So it means that my parents moved from asking me my ideas and also my opinion, and they moved now to my younger brother. This is what broke my heart. And also my younger brother thought that himself was bigger than me, and he thought that he could overtake my position as the firstborn. So in the family, and also families that have children with special needs, whether they are big or young, parents always jump them and they choose another sibling that doesn't have disability. This is the problem that we have, and also the problems that we face as a family. This is what broke my heart. But I continued reading, and also through reading it gave me strength, and I opened my mind, and also it gave me a lot of knowledge to understand the world that is not a bed of flowers.
He had to find ways of coping, and this is where his journey in the church ministry began.
That year was 1986, and I started going to their church, which was in Gong Road. And slowly by slowly, I started to learn sign language. And after about 6 months, I was signing perfectly and I could understand sign language. And that is how I learned sign language.
The Presbyterian Church started the deaf ministry earlier than most churches, including the Adventist Church, where he currently worships.
That was deaf ministry, but it was sponsored by PCA Church. That the PCA Church started a ministry, and also they rented a house at Ngong Road, and then they started bringing the deaf people, teaching them on how to worship on Sunday. But in the Adventist Church by that time, there was no deaf ministry. So I knew there was deaf ministry in Sunday churches, and that is where I went to learn sign language. I was not focusing on the Bible teachings, but I was focusing on learning sign language. For 6 months, that is what I did.
After joining the Adventist Church, he has been at the forefront in ensuring that the deaf do not miss out in church activities.
I read the Bible and I understood very well. I read prophecy, I read health, and I read everything. And I thought that this message, the deaf people outside here, they don't understand about this message. And also they don't have an idea about God and about Christ, about prophecy. They didn't have an idea about it. So I started wondering, how am I supposed to share with them? So now every Saturday I could go to church. That is the SDA church, and then on Sunday I could go to the church at Gong Road to teach them. And then when I came back to our church, I saw there was a very big challenge, because the pastor could preach, I could not hear anything, and I was depending on my friends to help me to write for me the Bible scriptures, and then they could give me. And then when I go home, I could now read and also try to compare with the Bible. That was a lot of challenge that I went through. And after 2 years, we saw the internet started, and I had also a very small Kabambe phone that I was using. But now it helped me, and also the internet helped me to contact one man in America, and I understood what Google is all about. So I started now Googling Adventist Deaf Ministry. It factory resetted, and then it gave me a lot of information, and it said that in America there is deaf ministry. And also I started wondering, how also can I start the same thing in Kenya? Is it possible? So I contacted one pastor in Canada who was by the name Pastor Blake. And through interacting with him and sharing the ideas that I had, he told me that there is another man in Mombasa who is called Henry Maina, and also who had the same idea as mine. So he told me if it is good for both of us to meet, so that we know how to spread now the idea that we had.
The only challenge is in the interpretation of music in church.
This choir that we have for interpreter, we started it, and the same way as I said before, the church like this one of ours, we have a choir. They come here at the pulpit and they sing with their own voices. But now when the interpreter is sitting down, she's only interpreting the words. But now the music, the tone of the music, we miss it because we only see the hands. But now I remember very well the time that I was hearing, we had a radio, and when I was hearing the guitar being played and the piano being played, and also the words that were coming from this music, they could give it gives people a very sweet inspiration and a very sweet feeling. But now, when I became deaf, I only see their hands because I cannot feel the sweetness of the music. That is what we are missing. But now, this interpreters group that started, we gave them the sense of music so that they can help the deaf people to understand music through their body language that they sing, and also through their hands, the way they sign it. So now, when they sing, we always feel the movement and also their music through their body movement, and also we understand through their sign language singing that they use. So now it means that it gives the deaf people a fulfillment in their heart, which they miss in the normal songs, and also through interpretation, other than sitting just down and interpreting the words alone.
With over 3 million people who are deaf, only a handful go to church, and is therefore a goal to have them included in order to attract more.
We need to work more. Also, we need to work more with our interpreters so that the church can understand more about our position, and also to understand about the deaf culture. The church should know that we have different cultures, that is the deaf culture and also the hearing culture. So now we need to ask the church to help us so that we can teach other members sign language, and also they can also teach the members about the deaf culture, so that the time that the minds of the people and attitudes change, the time that a deaf person comes in the church, they're going to feel at home, not as a visitor, but as a member and a true member of the church. And also, this is what the members are going to feel as valued, who are the deaf people.
Richard says that his family has had to learn sign language as well.
From the time they were born and they were growing, I could communicate with them, and also they learned sign language, not the same way as others, but through watching. The time they were born, they knew that our father is not the same as other fathers outside there. We must touch him so that he looks at us, and then we communicate. So when they were young, they could speak, and then I could lip read, and they knew that I was lip reading them. They could not try to face the other side. So the first thing they were doing is touch me and then face me directly and then speak to me. So they knew that I was lip reading them, and this is what I was good at. So before myself, I learned sign language. And also, in the early years, I never had the opportunity to teach them sign language, because myself, I could not understand it myself as well. I only understood lip reading, and that is what I taught them from the time they were small. But now when they were big, when we meet them and we try to communicate with them, they try now to sign, which I've taught them. But my grandchildren, some of them, they understand sign language very well.
Let's take a look at the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities.
Article 25 of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities states that state parties shall, Part B, provide those health services needed by persons with disabilities, specifically because of their disabilities, including early identification and intervention as appropriate, and services designed to minimize and prevent further disabilities, including among children and older persons.
Here is the tip of the day.
Once a diagnosis is made and the hearing level is established, then the hearing aid is fitted. A hearing aid is not something that we just go and pick from the market and you just put like a necklace or a hearing. It is a treatment, and therefore should be given based on individual's hearing level.
We've come to the end of the show for today. However, we leave you with this song that has been signed by Divine Sign Language Choir. Till next week, I've been your host, Ruth Mweni.
And me, Jen Theuri.
Goodbye.
Adui hoda gizani mchana daima kesha. Kesha omba, kesha omba, kesha omba, kesha omba, kesha kaombe gizani mchana daima kesha. Yesu mkubali awe nguvu zako, silaha uzivae, adui karibu. Sasa nafasi ipo, isipite bure, bila kukawia, basi ya kesha. Kesha omba, kesha omba, kesha omba, kesha omba, kesha kaombe gizani mchana daima kesha. Kesha omba, kesha omba, kesha omba, kesha omba, kesha kaombe gizani mchana daima kesha.
We are here and we are strong. Let's be counted as we move on. Make a difference, change lives as we tell our different stories. We are capable, beautiful. We are born to do great things. We're unstoppable, incredible, 'cause we're differently abled, differently.